Right, we move on now to extraordinary items, and there aren't any. So now we move to item 7. And of course today it's about transferring the budget to allow upgrades to happen at Waikareka Park. We've just heard that this is unanimously supported by the local board, and it avoids $1.2 million cost per annum to council by standing on its own merits. So it's been a long time coming and represents a lot of work from a lot of people, and it's been supported by the Speedway organisers who are here today. So I'd now like to hand over to Alistair to introduce the item. Thank you, Alistair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillors, I would just like to acknowledge the presence of the local board members. Unfortunately, I'll be a lot less passionate in my presentation than they were. We also have members of TAU staff, Nick Hill and some of his staff here. Also, I'd like to acknowledge in the audience Bruce Robertson and John McCallum from the Western Springs Speedway promoters, and there's also representatives from the Auckland Stock and Saloon Car Club here today. Today you're being asked to transfer $11 million from Tātaki's capital budget to the Maungakiki Tamaki local board to fund the critical works that will allow the consolidation of speedway activities at Waikareka Park. I acknowledge that the governing body has had limited visibility of this proposal, so I'd just like to outline the process that has been gone through to get us here. Last year, Tātaki commissioned an independent study to provide analysis to identify a preferred location or locations for speedway operations in the Auckland region to unlock the potential of speedway and ensure the long-term future of the sport in Auckland. This work was done with input from a wide range of speedway stakeholders. That location analysis identified the consolidation of speedway activities at Waikareka Park as the preferred option. Once the location analysis was completed, there was further consultation with speedway stakeholders to determine whether they supported the independent location analysis. Support was gained for consolidation, although this support from stakeholders was always conditional on the completion of critical infrastructure works at Waikareka Park that would allow all speedway classes to use the facility. Once that agreement was reached, there was further and ongoing engagement with the commercial operators of speedway, owners and drivers in relation to the detailed design work that would be necessary to upgrade Waikareka Park to allow successful consolidation. There was further work done once agreement had been reached on the necessary upgrades to determine whether that work was deliverable from a building and resource consent perspective, as well as working with the local board as the property owners. So a lot of work has been done to try to find a best for Auckland and best for Speedway solution, and that work was done in conjunction with Speedway stakeholders. This resulted in an agreement about the best location for Speedway and the work required to bring Waikareka Park up to scratch. Further work was then done to understand whether the work was deliverable. That just left the issue of funding the proposal. And the local board, as they have explained, did not have the budget to undertake these critical works. Without a funding source, there was no real proposal for council, the governing body, to consider. That was when the possibility of TAU making some of their budget available to be transferred to the Maungakiki Tamaki local board was identified. And this was a catalyst for seeking formal agreement from the various parties, the Waikareka Park promoter and Western Springs promoter. They entered, those promoters entered into an MOU in early October. The TAU board agreed in principle to provide the funding on the 20th of October, and the local board approved the detailed design and for the critical works on Tuesday of this week. So I guess what I'm trying to emphasise here is that there's been a lot of work done with the stakeholders in this process, but all the pieces have only just fallen into place that will actually crystallise this as a proposal for something for the governing body to actually consider. When it became clear that the governing body was required to make a decision around this proposal of transferring the funding, the Deputy Mayor, in the Mayor's absence, asked that staff arranged for opportunities for councillors to be briefed on the proposal. So that's resulted in the drop-in sessions and the workshop earlier this week. So it's all come together in the last few weeks, but there is some urgency in the decision that you're being asked to make. All of the parties involved are committed to beginning racing at the consolidate of all the consolidated classes from the beginning of next season, which starts in October 2025. The work plan to deliver these critical works at Waikaraka Park to enable this is already on its critical path. There is no sufficient time within this work program to cater for a delay to next month's governing body, as this would result in the physical works procurement process being delayed to early December. Realistically, this would mean physical works potentially being delayed until late February or early March. The level of risk that this would introduce into the construction program is likely to mean that all works would be delayed for a year, just to ensure that there will be no impact on the 25-26 racing season. A one-season delay would have financial costs in terms of delaying the realisation of benefits at Western Springs, which is just north of $1 million, as well as potential cost escalations in the Waikaraka Park upgrade works. I think more importantly here, given the history of this, a delay in the process runs the risk of the council family losing the confidence of the Speedway stakeholders that a solution can actually be found, and thereby delaying the realisation of the benefits of consolidation for an extended period of time. And just quickly running through what are the benefits of consolidation. Well, for Waikaraka Park and for Speedway, it would result in a better and safer track than is currently at Western Springs. Waikaraka Park would end up with improved and bigger pit facilities that would allow for more competitors able to participate in meetings. Crucially, Waikaraka Park is allowed to host 35 events per year, whereas Western Springs can only host 12 events. The move of all classes to Waikaraka Park would also give Speedway greater security of tenure. The current lease for Waikaraka Park is a 10-year lease with 2 rights of renewal that will take it up to 2051. If we contrast that with the promoter's license to operate at Western Springs, that expires in March of next year. With the security of tenure comes greater certainty for investment into the facilities and into the teams, and there's also a greater opportunity to attract sponsorship. The move of Speedway from Western Springs would also bring benefits to the operation of that stadium, as it would provide greater flexibility. Currently, there are competing users, Speedway and music events, that make it difficult to fully utilise the stadium. The TAU have forecast that they'll be able to improve the financial performance of Western Springs by just over $1 million per annum as a result of moving Speedway. I would note that there has been some commentary in the media that this is the first step in a series of changes to Auckland stadiums. As you know, Tātaki is running a process to determine the best use for Western Springs Stadium. The governing body will consider the outcomes of that process in the coming months, and if a change to the stadium is proposed through that process, that will be a decision of the governing body at that time. From a financial perspective for both Council and Speedway, the decision regarding the transfer of funding for the upgrades at Waikaraka Park to enable consolidation of Speedway stands on its own merits, irrespective of the outcome of that EOA process. So making a decision on the transfer of the $11 million no way predetermines or impacts any broader decisions on the stadium network. So in summary, agreement has been reached with the Speedway operators that consolidating activity at Waikaraka Park is the best option. Agreement has been reached with the Speedway community on the capital works required to allow that consolidation, and a majority of the feedback from the Speedway supporters has been supportive of this, although it's acknowledged that not all. The proposal gives effect to the Waikaraka Park Master Plan and is unanimously supported by the local board. The only issue that remains is that of how to fund the works. So given the benefits to both Speedway and the council group, staff are therefore recommending that the governing body approve the transfer of the $11 million from TAU's budget to Maungakiki Tamaki Local Board to allow these works to proceed. And with that, I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Alistair. Max, do you want to add anything more, or are you there for questions? Just there for questions?
Here for questions.
Thanks, Max. Right, first question, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Who issues the licence for the operation of Speedway at Western Springs?
TAU is the landlord there.
And what's stopping TAU issuing it again after the end of the completion of this period at the end of March?
That's a decision for the TAU board, but as I outlined in my introduction, TAU has estimated a financial benefit of over $1 million from not having Speedway at Western Springs, so that would be one of the factors I'd have to consider.
So I understand they're making financial considerations, but the date of the 31st, of the end of March next year is not some sort of stop at the end of the railway line. It is flexible, correct?
There is the potential to extend that licence. Yes, that's always an option.
Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks. Couple of questions here. Item 40 in the agenda, the official agenda in bold print, identifies support for consolidation at Waikaraka Park across the sport, and says support for consolidation of Speedway at Waikaraka Park is present across the sport, with letters of support provided to express support for the decision, and lists a number of entities, including individuals. The first and conceivably the most significant there is Speedway New Zealand, the national body. This morning I and a couple of other councillors received a communication, which I'm happy to table, from Speedway New Zealand, from their general manager, Mr. Aaron Kirby. Apologies for this late correspondence. However, we were only made aware of this matter last night. Please find attached a letter from Speedway New Zealand that we feel is of vital importance to today's council meeting. The attached outlines a misrepresentation of the intent of our support letter for the continued investment at Waikaraka Park upgrades. We would like it noted for the record that Speedway New Zealand has at no time ever considered supporting the closure of Western Springs Speedway, and to date have not formally been informed that this was an option being considered. Mr. Kirby then goes on to say in his letter that this is urgent correspondence for this meeting. Speedway New Zealand was made aware late on 23rd of October last night of this meeting today with respect of the transfer of budget to enable consolidation of Speedway at Waikaraka Park. More specifically, point 40, the one I read out, support for the consolidation at Waikaraka Park across the sport. Speedway New Zealand notes that a letter dated 19th August 2024 is recorded as supporting the consolidation of Western Springs and AWSC at Waikaraka Park, and wishes it to have it noted for the record that this was not and is not intended to support the permanent closing of Western Springs Speedway. At no time was Speedway New Zealand notified of any consolidation of Speedway at Waikaraka, nor were we informed that the letter requesting support for the continued funding of Waikaraka would be used in such a way. In bold print, the sole intent of the letter was to support the ongoing investment to upgrade the facilities of Waikaraka Park. To have the letter recorded in the agenda and its attachments as support for the consolidation of Speedway at Waikaraka Park is a complete misrepresentation of the intent of the letter. Speedway New Zealand Incorporated does not support the closure of Western Springs Speedway for numerous reasons that we feel we have not been given the opportunity to speak to, let alone consult our members on. Should the true intent of our letter not be conveyed to the members in accordance with today's meeting, we would like it noted that we withdraw the letter of support altogether, as we believe the implication that we support the master plan will have far-reaching consequences of both our organisation and the sport. That's Speedway New Zealand, that's the communication. I would just say, Madam Chair and Mr CEO, that is the flavour of a number of other groups who, right up until now, have been labouring under the misapprehension that the funding of Waikareka Park and the closure of Western Springs were not tied up, and that was people quite advanced. And I think that will be the general feedback from a number of groups. So my question to you, Mr CEO, is this is a council agenda. It's out in the public. It has been the subject of discussion and is repeated in the memo from the CEO of Tātaki this morning, that Speedway New Zealand is one of the groups supporting that. I believe that that this isn't the only example of this, and it questions the credibility of this process. There has already been a number of objections put on the record formally as to the way this matter has been conducted. The last time we had this meeting, and this is relevant to today's proceedings, we had a senior council officer presenting, put a crash helmet on the table, purporting to be support of the drivers. That turned out to be a complete and utter fabrication, for which that officer then disappeared from position. So my question to the CEO and also to you as a chair of this meeting is the very first instance of a communication here from the national body saying they're being misrepresented. I take that as a serious matter, especially as it comes on top of all the other serious procedural irregularities that have been highlighted to a number of people in this organisation. So that's my first question.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. I should acknowledge for the wider chamber that a question was raised with me formally by some councillors about procedural elements sitting in behind this. A number of arguments made in terms of timeliness, engagement, the adequacy of whether councillors were sufficiently informed. I communicated back to those councillors that on review I considered that councillors were in a position to make an informed position, and importantly that question of whether you were sufficiently informed is in the context of your ability to defer this item should you choose to, if that concern is shared more widely around the chamber. My view was that that's an appropriate course of action in a democratic situation where, on balance, you choose to either proceed or not. Now, this is new information to me, okay? And I'm going to ask the chair whether it mightn't be prudent just to take a minute, pause the meeting while we have a discussion.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that in a minute. The meeting will break for 5 minutes. Thank you.